second Monday of the month, 1:30 to 3:30, we all, those that want to, get together in the art studio, and we just do baskets for a couple hours. But it's a show and tell of what you have done. It's a problem-solving session for people that have a problem or something like that. We get together and we say, okay, I need some of this and I need some of that. So we order supplies and just generally sit around and have a social time. It's just open. Anybody that's interested in the basketry. That's all it takes. It's just an interest. And if you're going to take my class, I provide all the materials. And all you have to bring is a pair of needle nose pliers and a pair of scissors. Everything else will be provided to you. Then you just have to have the interest to do it. It's fun, it's interesting, it's challenging, and it's satisfying. Well, my art, if you want to call it art, is make pine needle baskets. They're coiled baskets, and they're made by using pine needles to construct the coil, and they're bound together with waxed Irish linen. And we use various methods to start the basket. We sometimes use a stone in the center. We sometimes use a sliced walnut shell in the center. Take your walnut shell, lay your needles on top of it so that the knot is between the needles and the walnut shell. Pull the little tail over to the right and lay it against the shell. Take the long end, pull it over the top, put the needle through a hole in the shell and pull it tight. Now these are, what, almost 18 inches long. These are very flexible pine needles. These are wonderful. They don't have very many of them anymore. This is what I was talking about. This is the southern longleaf pine, and these came from Ocala, Florida. I picked these up when we were there visiting family for a class, and they make this basket, and then they start two more, and they still have needles left over. So you can pull that around, and we'll use the needles dry. We don't soak them, if you can get green ones. If a limb of the nice tree comes down in a storm or something like that, and you can get them while they're still green, they're very nice, because then they're really pliable. Then what you do is you take them, separate them from the branch, and clean them up, dry them, let them dry. Just use plain old RIT dye and dye the pine needles, so you can have a variety of colors. So that adds interest to your different baskets if you use different colored pine needles. The first thing I did was I turned the wooden base on my lathe, and I put a little a rim on it here, drilled holes around the rim, and that gave me my start for the first coil. And as I got out about 2 rounds, the basket says, "This is pretty boring." So I said, okay, I'm going to put in these 8 enhancements here. And as you can see, as I said, by going out through here, each time I wrapped this coil, that got thicker than this area where it wasn't wrapped. So by the time I got out to this point, I had 8 definite sides to it. You know, I got a brown and a gold and a brown, and then how do you attach them to each other? And so I devised that way of being able to put them one on top of the other. And as you can see, one of the purposes, as I said, of the wrapped coil is to reposition your stitches. You can see how far apart they were getting here, whereas out here, they're right back close together again. And this is where it was taking me 8 hours to go all the way around once. And so then I got here and I said, it's okay, now it's time to start up. And as I said, I was going to make a basket which came in like this, and the top was going to end up the same size as this. But as I started coming up the size and adding again this additional enhancement, this being thicker than this forced this up, this was down, and so now I had scallops. And when I got to there, the basket was saying, it's about time to stop. See about adding in some embellishments by these short wrapped coils, and so I do. It's got this spiral. I don't know if you can you pick that up there, that spiral? So I saw this is a button. An Indian horn, not American Indian, but Asian Indian animal horn button that they made. And so I saw that in a fabric shop, and I bought a couple of them. And what I did was I drilled holes just around the edge there. And so that gave me something to put my first coil on. Then I did the spiral thing, and then I decided how I wanted to shape it. So I shaped it up, and when I got that far, I said, oh, that would look pretty good with the lid. So I had the other button, so I did this one, and this is where I say, okay, I started off the same way, but instead of going up when I got out, I let it taper off a little bit. Then I put a rim on the inside of it, and finally I tied a knot on the top of the button. That's a Chinese love knot. And so I call that my Love Me Not basket, and that belongs to my wife. We do use what we call a gauge on the bundle, and it serves a couple of purposes. Number one is it keeps your needles under control pretty much, and it ensures that your coil has the same size all the way around, so you don't get lumps in your coil. Fat spaces and then thin spaces and then fat spaces and then thin spaces. So by using that, you keep the even tension. You know it's time to add needles, and so your coil is the same size all the way around. And we have different size gauges for different size baskets, different size pine needles, new materials which I had never used before. One was artificial sinew in place of the waxed linen, and a copper wire. And so you were weaving with both the sinew and the wire alternatively, and so you would do a stitch with the sinew and you would do a stitch with the wire, and you would do a stitch with the sinew and a stitch with the wire. And the wire was very springy. I say it was like trying to weave with a slinky. So the basket is coated as the final step, next to final step. Final step is putting your signature on it, but the next to final step is beeswax. And what I do is I take a piece of beeswax, which you can get at Michael's, and I melt it. I put it in a crock pot and I melt it in the microwave. And then when it's liquid, you paint it onto the basket. And as it cools and dries on the basket, it turns white. And you wonder if you've really ruined all your hard work by doing this. But then what you do is, I take a hairdryer. You reheat it. You can either put it back in the microwave, you can put it in the oven. I use a hairdryer and just reheat that wax again, and it melts from on the basket, and it just is absorbed into the pine needles and the linen. Once I found out how to do it, I had so many ideas that were coming to me about how I wanted to incorporate this into my life, this basket making. And as I mentioned, I also am a wood turner, and I had all kinds of ideas about how I could turn various wooden bases and make different type baskets. And so as I went on, I would just, the first were very simple baskets, and then I decided I was going to enhance them with, so that I could have spirals, or I could have stars, or I could have arrows, or whatever I wanted to have. And that way, it just went on from there. It's amazing. You can almost hear it say, "Okay, this is the last time around. You know, it's time to think about putting it away, because it's not going to look nice." The golden mean. And he started out by saying that he would go into museums and that sort of thing, and certain art pieces would catch his eye and be very pleasing. Other pieces that he would see would be discomforting, and he wondered why. And so he studied that, and then he finally came down to the fact that he was talking about the golden mean, which most artists probably understand, but I get a real enjoyment out of it. It's soothing. It brings me a lot of satisfaction just to try different things with it, see how it's done. Especially the different stones that are available now to use for the stone centers that we use. I don't know if you can. Is that in the light enough? I didn't consider that I was making an art piece when I was working on it, but maybe I should do that.